Dear learners, welcome you all to the Department of Social Studies and the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences of the Open University of Sri Lanka. This course, Ssu2132 Health Economics, is offered under Level 4 of the BA degree in Social Sciences, which is delivered to you as interactive multimedia course. Again, a warm welcome to all. I am Achintya Koswatha, lecturer attached to the Department of Social Studies. I felt honored to have two intellectuals with me, Mr. L.D.I. Wijayatunga, who is a senior member of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, and Ms. Samanthi. She is working attached to the Institute of Policy Studies. I wish that both of you will shower your knowledge over us. Without taking much of your time, I would like to start the program. So in the first two sessions, we discussed the basic economic concepts. In economics, there are four resources: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. These resources are limited with compared to the unlimited wants of the people. So this creates the problem of scarcity. Scarcity causes opportunity cost, and we draw opportunity cost by using production possibility curves. And also, finally, we have given some health economic implications about these basic economic concepts. So today we are moving to session 3, that is demand and supply. So in an economy, consumer makes the demand and the producer makes the supply. So where these consumers and producers meet is the market. So after finishing this session, you should be able to define what is market, what is the market demand, what is the law of supply, and change in quantity demanded and change in demand. So our first question is, what is market? What is the concept of market? I would like to raise that question from Mr. Wijayatunga.
Thank you. Market in economics is a very important concept. Market is an arrangement through which buyers and sellers make contact in order to exchange goods and services. Now, this contact is very important elements. Unless these two parties, that is buyers and sellers, contact each other, there won't be any market. So this contact may be either face to face or indirectly by mail or telephone or online. Now, for example, when I say face to face, we can think about, say, Sunday pola or Gaharuada pola or supermarket or retail market, or you can talk about the European market, exchange market. There are so many markets we face. But remember, this contact, either physical face-to-face or, as I mentioned, it could be indirectly by mail. Now, today, because of the technology, through email, you can order some goods and buy those goods. That means there we don't have face-to-face, but these things are occur. So similarly, on online also, today we can buy some goods like books. We can order some material through online. So that is the nature of the market. Now, in other words, here, as you mentioned, there are two groups. One is a buyers, others are sellers. In the market, so buyer as a group determine the demand for the product, and sellers as a group determine the supply of product. So in general, to make a market, you have a minimum two players. One, the buyers, other one is a sellers. In other words, we call it demand and supply. Achinta?
Okay. Yes, according to you, the buyers creates the demand. Buyers create the demand. And what do you mean by this demand?
Well, meaning of demand, we use the term demand to describe consumer willingness and ability to pay for particular product and services. Now, in demand in economics has a precise meaning. Unless consumer willingness, that means you like to buy, that is called willingness, and ability to buy, that unless you have money, there won't be any effective demand. So these two terms in demand, that is a consumer willingness and ability to pay, are very important. These two terms should be go together. Unless that, there won't be any demand for particular goods and services.
Okay, Mr. Wijetunga, can you explain what factors influence this demand?
Well, actually demand is an abstract form we take it because demand depends on various factors. In economics, we call it variables. What are these variables? It could be price, it could be income, it could be prices of other commodities, or it could be your consumer taste, or it could be a consumer expectation, or number of buyers. So all these together finally decide the level of demand. So let me repeat. You asked me the factors behind the demand. So we call it variable behind the demand. One would be the price, other one with the other prices, other would be income, say taste, expectation, and number of consumers which are available that market, that particular moment.
Okay, we discussed some factors like prices of other goods, income, taste, expectations, and the other factors affect this demand. Are there any specific factors which has a different relationship with this demand?
Yeah, that's right. In economics, traditionally, we can convert these factors into the two baskets. One, the price and demand. Other one is other factors and the demand. In other words, demand for any commodity mainly depends on the price of that commodity. So that is a one equation. Other one is a other determinant, so other variable. It include price of related commodities, income consumer, taste, preference of consumer, expectation of the consumer, number of buyers, all come at the other basket. So in other words, Ajinta, here we have demand and price. Other one is demand and other factors.
Okay, our next concept is the law of demand. So what do you mean by that?
Well, in economics, like in other social sciences, we use a lot of laws, theories, model, and so forth in order to capture the reality of the market, because we can't read the market as it is. See, in order to capture that one, we use a lot of theories and a lot of laws and so forth. Among them, law of demand is very important. Now, in economics, law of demand define price. When price falls, quantity demand rises. When price rises, quantity demand falls. What does that mean? Consumer point of view, I would prefer the prices is a low level. When prices is low, I will have more demand. I will request more commodity. And in other words, there is a negative relationship between quantity demand and price, because these two variables, that is demand in the one side, price is the other side. So we in economics we call it demand depends on price. There's an opposite direction, that is when price goes up, demand for that particular commodity or service is going down. That means we call it negative relationship or inverse relationship.
So according to the law of demand, when price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. And when price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. So this creates the negative relationship between price and quantity. So we can present this by using a schedule, using a graph, or using an equation. So first we'll discuss what is the demand schedule.
Yeah, actually before that, Chinta, we can summarize this area before we jump to the schedule. Now look at this equation. Here we have read all this demand function of price. Other things are remain constant. That means when you talk about the demand is a function of price, we assume other factors do not disturb this one. So that is the meaning behind the law of demand. So you are asking me the demand schedule. Same story can be explained through data. In economics, not like in other subject, we can think about the hypothetical data. If you look at this demand schedule, here we have two columns. On the left column, we have price with regard to the particular commodity and market demand. Now, if you look at, say, when price is at 8 rupees, we demand 60. But when price is 20, we'll demand more, 210. That's why we say relationship is the inverse or negative relationship. So this demand schedule is a practical way of understanding about the law of demand.
Okay, if we insert these values into a graph, that is we call demand curve. So what do you think about this demand curve?
Now, we are talking about the law of demand. Law of demand is the relationship between demand and price, which is inward relationship. We are talking about the schedule, that is the database. Now, we can convert this data set into a diagram, a curve. Now, if you look at the axis, now here we have a vertical axis, that is a P, and horizontal axis, that is a Q. Now, so we can use the same data which are available under the price and market. Say price data can be listed as say 20, 40, 60 and 80. Similarly, on horizontal, that is the quantity can be listed, our quantity amount, say 60, 110, 160, 210. Now, if you look at the one example, now suppose at the moment, say price at that particular commodity, say 80 rupees. When price is 80 rupees, we will demand 60. We can think about, say, in Sri Lanka, rice market or paddy market, or European countries, say, wheat market in agriculture commodity. So, same story is occurring over there. So, in other words, say when, as I mentioned, when price is 80, we demand 60. But remember, when price is 20, we will demand more, according to this 210. That's why I told you that relationship between quantity demanded and price is inverse or negative.
Okay, we discussed about the demand function, what factors affect demand, price, other factors, and income, taste, expectations and all. And we use a demand schedule to show that relationship. And also we draw that in a demand curve. So can you summarize all these concepts in one table?
Yeah, we can. Now we are talking about the law of demand. Now here we have four parts of this diagram. In the first part, we can say definition about the law of demand. In words, the law of demand is other things equal, as price fall, quantity demand rises. And as price rises, quantity demanded falls. That is in words. We can convert same story into the diagram. So the second segment, we can say the diagram as it is. The third one is the data. Fourth one, we can say demand is a function of price. So this is an entire summary about the law of demand.
Okay, changes in price will change the quantity demanded. When price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. When price goes down, quantity demanded goes up.
Correct.
This causes movements along the curve. So what is change in quantity demanded or movements along the curve?
Now look at this diagram, that is the second one. In the second one, if you look at this diagram, here we have mentioned the price and quantity. Now at say 40 rupees, we demand 1000. But when price reach 20, we demand 6000. That means we move from C to F, that we call it demand along the curve. Here we talk about the price and demand. Or we can talk about, suppose at the moment price is 20 rupees, that is at the 20s, we demand 600. But when price goes up, say 40, we move from F to C. Again, we go along on the curve. That's the major core in regard to demand and or law of demand theory.
Okay, then we discussed movement along the curve, that is mainly because of changes in price. So what will happen the other factors change?
Now other factors, now look at this equation again. We are talking about the so many variables. Among them we had discussed demand and price of P. Now when you talk about the demand is a function of P, we assume other factor remain constant. Now here we relax other factors. Relax other factor mean we relax income, price of related goods, or preference, expectation, number of buyers, or price of other goods. When we relax that one, and there we assume price is constant. Here price is constant, but we relax one by one other factors. We call it shift in the demand curve. Now, if you look at this diagram, now we have two variables, price and quantity. This is our original curve. original curve. Now suppose my income, say monthly income, increased by 10%. When income increased by 10%, with the same price, I can buy more. Now, for example, say when income goes, say 10%, this curve, that is a original my D curve, shift to the right side, that is a T2. That means at the same price, that is a P1 price, I will buy Q2. That means Q2 is greater than original Q. But assume that my income decreased by 10%. What will happen? Because my purchasing power, that means ability to buy power, going down. When ability going down, I can't able to buy more. That means that curve, original curve, shift to the left side. So in other words, at the same price, original price, I will buy less amount. That is a Q1. That is the nature of the shift in demand curve.
At the beginning of this session, we were discussing about two parties in an economy. First one is consumers and the other one is producers. So consumers created the demand and producers created the supply. So now we are moving to supply concept. So after finishing this session, you should be able to define these key concepts: the market supply, the law of supply, changes in quantity supplied, and change in supply. So what is this supply concept? I would like to ask that question from Mr. Wijetunga.
Well, supply is the mirror image of demand. What does that mean? We are talking about the two actors, that is supplier and consumer. Now, supply is not just the amount of some good that exists, but the willingness and ability of potential seller to produce and sell it. Like in demand, here also we have two concepts, that is supplier willingness. Unless he or she like to produce something, there won't be any supply. Similarly, he should be able to produce, that we call it ability to produce something. So we have two concepts called willingness and ability potential. So in other words, here we have supply is not just a amount of some good.
Okay, Mr. Wijetunga, that's indeed a clear explanation. So in demand function, we had some certain set of factors like price of the good, income level, taste, other factors like that. So in supply also, I think we have certain set of factors affecting to the quantity supplied. So what are those factors?
Right. As you correctly mentioned, even in the supply side, there are so many variables or factors behind this supply side. What are these? One is a price, which is a common both parties. Others are the price of input prices, technology, and tax and subsidies, and price of other commodities, and say suppliers' expectation, number of sellers. All these variables come together and decide the level of demand. So in other words, like in demand, here also we have a list of variables. So in other words, here remember, if you closely look at this equation, in equation we have read the variable, that is a price. Price is a common element which apply to both parties, that is a producer and seller. Those are the areas.
Okay, in demand function, we discussed about the law of demand. When price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. So that was called law of demand. So in supply also we have law of supply. So what does it mean by law of supply?
The law of supply state that when the price good rises and everything else remain the same, the quantity of good supply will also rise. Now remember that very important assumption behind this law of supply: everything else remains same. What do you mean by everything remain same? That means other factors, other variables, that is technology, expectation, number of potential sellers, all are remain constant. In other words, like we define the law of demand, here we also define the correlation between supply and price with other factor remain constant. Something like this. Look at this equation. Supply is a function of price and other factors, say technology, expectation, all remain constant. That is the meaning behind that one. In other words, when you say law of supply, that is supply is a function of price when other factor remain constant.
Okay, in demand theory, we presented demand by using a schedule, graph, and a function. So supply also, I think we can apply that into the supply concept also. So how can we describe the supply schedule?
Like in demand, here supply side also we have schedule. Now supply schedule is a tabular presentation of the law of supply. Now in other words, if you look at the data, we can list the data. We can take the same data from the market. Now here we have two columns. One is the price, other one is quantity supply. Now for example, say 10 rupees. At the 10 rupees, people supply 4,000 quantity. But when price is going up, say 50 rupees, people would prefer to sell 12,000. So see the difference between demand schedule and supply schedule. In a supply schedule, the same direction. That is, as a supplier, I would prefer to supply when prices is very high. When prices is very low, that is, I said, in this case, 10 rupees, I prefer to apply only 4,000. But when prices is 40 rupees, I prefer to 10,000. That is the nature of the supply, because I, as a producer, go by a profit, higher prices. So in other words, here in this Achinta, not only that, here like in the demand curve, we can represent the supply as a curve also. Supply curve is a graphical presentation of the relations between price and quantity supply, with other factor remain constant. Now, for example, if you look at this curve, it's very clear. In this curve, this side is on the left side, or the vertical curve, we have prices. On the horizontal curve, the axis, we have quantity. So relationship is positive, because now, for example, suppose if price is 20 rupees, I would prefer to supply 6,000. But when price is higher compared to the 20, say 40 rupees, I would prefer to supply 10,000 rupees. That is the nature of the producer or seller. Seller would prefer to go by always higher prices. When price is higher, then I would prefer to go. So in other words, in price, suppose when price going down from 40 to 20, then I have to, as a producer or seller, I have to go from B to A. That is the nature of the law of supply curve.
Okay, I think we can summarize this supply schedule, supply curve, and supply function by one window.
Now look at this, there are 4 segments over there. In economics, not like in the social and other subject, language is very powerful, because any concept can be expressed through 4 dimensions. One, in words. Now, for example, first dimension, we can say, we can define law of supply. The second, we can convert these words into the data, like the second segment. Third, we can convert this data into the diagram. Finally, we can say, very simple term, supply is a function of price. That is the nature of the language of the economics also. Yes? Okay,
in demand theory, we had some factors which shifted the demand curve to the right or left, like income, taste, and the other factors except price. So in supply also, supply curve can be shifted by some factors. What are those factors?
Yeah, factors are in the supply side. Suppose when input prices say going up or going down, then supply curve either turn to the left or right. Similarly, technology. Similarly, tax and subsidies. Similarly, price on other goods. So all these factors would influence shifting the current supply curve either to the left side or right side. Now, for example, if you look at this curve, say original curve is a supply 1. Now I have drawn the 2 curves. One is a S2, other one is a X3. Suppose using my technology is very old. When technology is very old, I am not able to compete other people. I can't produce the much product. Therefore, my curve would lift to the left side. But suppose if I use the latest technology, if I use the latest technology, I may be able to produce a more. That means I can supply more supply to the market. As a result, it can be moved to the right side in the same prices. Similarly, suppose my expectation regarding particular commodity also go up, then I would prefer to supply more and more commodity to the market. That means my curve would shift from the current supply curve to the right S2 curve.
Okay, I think that's all about the supply concept. So today's session we discussed about the demand and the supply and what factors will shift the demand curve to the right and to the left, and also what factors will shift the supply curve to the right and supply curve to the left. So this is about microeconomic basic theories. So in economics there are various branches like environmental economics, health economics, and resource economics, like that. So now I'm going to look at the health economic aspect of these basic concepts. So I would like to raise this question from Ms. Samanthi. How do we apply this buyers and sellers concept to health economics?
Well, yes, Achintya, let me explain this very briefly. So far, you have learned the key players in the conventional market. They are buyers and sellers. Likewise, we can observe the same players in the healthcare market. Who are the sellers? Who are the buyers? Buyers are so-called consumers, are the healthcare seekers. They are patients. Who are the suppliers? Suppliers are the service providers. For instance, doctors, pharmacists. But you should keep in mind the behavior of both parties is significantly different from the conventional market. Achintya?
Okay, thank you, Samanthi. This is a fruitful discussion about demand and supply. So in the next session, we are going to talk about how this demand and supply meets in a market that is called equilibrium. Thank you.